This first question is for any of the witnesses that would like to answer. Can you provide an assessment of whether any U.S. entities such as hospitals, universities, or research partners have collaborated with the CCP transplant institutions engaging in illegal organ harvesting and trafficking practices?
I can speak to it briefly, but in terms of the details, probably afterwards. I understand that there is actually information that has been gathered at HHS. There's some sort of report that's been gathered by HHS that touches on this question that is kind of, perhaps needs to be dislodged from under a lot of bureaucracy. That's one quick answer. There's an example. The Select Committee wrote a letter to Harvard University about a number of research partnerships that they had. I believe that was last year or within the last couple of years. We trained over 100 transplant surgeons here in the United States from different institutions. That's an obvious connection. I think it would be an amazing effort to try to catalog all of this. And this is something that I'm actually in the process of trying to do, but obviously institutions are uninterested in being terribly cooperative in providing that information if they can avoid it. So that's a roundabout answer for you. Perhaps some of the others here can provide some more exact specifics.
Any other insight from any of the other witnesses?
I did mention Thermo Fisher because they stand out. What our witness here was talking about really didn't begin in 2016 or 2017. It was signaled in 2013 by an unusual tactic, which the police of China used on Falun Gong, actually, initially, and they were coming into people's homes. These were people not in detention, but they were coming into their homes and doing a blood test and a DNA cheek swab. This happened in 5 to 6 provinces. There's a little dispute about the 6th. The point is that the DNA cheek swab indicated a new method. Some Human Rights Watch interpreted it as a surveillance tool, and that's probably right. But it's also completely compatible with tissue matching, tissue typing, and cross-matching. So that is followed by Thermo Fisher supplying the DNA kits for testing the entire Uyghur and Kazakh population of Xinjiang. Now, this is not something that Han Chinese, they were exempt, and they're practically half the population. But the entire population, everybody above the age of 12 had to be tested. And the DNA kits apparently were all supplied by Thermo Fisher. They made a killing in this market.
Let me ask you this right here. Do any of the witnesses have factual data related to how these body parts are coming to America? And, they've got to get here somehow. Anybody, any of that going on?
Can I just jump in on that? I don't believe parts are coming to America, really. I mean,
there are people that believe they are.
Well, that's fine, but it's certainly not my experience in China on the ground. They like to have complete control of organ harvesting, and I've never seen absolutely persuasive evidence, other than certainly there's good speculation, probably correct, about fetal body parts and fetal tissue being sold to our great universities. I don't think there's any question that they've moved on from Planned Parenthood and China's the supplier. Proving that, of course, conclusively is
absolutely
very important.
Okay. Do you believe the existing U.S. safeguards are enough to prevent American institutions from indirectly endorsing or profiting from these practices, or should the U.S. government explore further measures such as increased transparency, reporting, or funding restrictions?
I think those are absolutely necessary and totally plausible, and they are things that we should be doing in face of this documentation, eyewitnesses of what's taking place. I mean, that's what Congress should be doing, and passing the bills like the forced organ or stopping forced organ harvesting, and including these types of provisions in that type of bill. Broad support, and I think it also is a moral stand for people in this country to take through their members of Congress to pass such legislation. We will not participate in any way, shape, or form in this type of horrific practice, and here's how we're expressing that.
Thank you. Mr. Gutman, in your estimation, what is the scale and scope of illegal sourced organs in China?
I'm not there with a clipboard, but, and my work is concentrated on the Uyghurs, but I do believe that this is the main source now. Our 2016 report was done with David Kilgore and David Matus, and a team of Falun Gong researchers who had spent 5 years collecting the data. Now, we came up with the idea that organs were basically, the transplant hospitals had been rationalized to about 150, or now it's more like 200, and that they were doing at least one transplant per day based on their capabilities. That quickly leads you to a number at least of 60,000.
Okay.
And we believe, I believe that it's more closer to 100,000.
Thank you, Mr. Gutman. Mr. Brownback, can you elaborate on how religious freedom can play a strategic role in our diplomatic engagement strategy with the CCP, and how would you recommend that tool be wielded to strengthen U.S. leadership and diplomacy?
I think you just watch and study what Ronald Reagan did in the face-off with the Soviet Union. It was the same godless, atheistic society. He traveled across the country. He pointed this out. He said, and then he also talked about what was the treatment of Jews in the country and evangelicals, the Jewish refuseniks. He brought the American public into it, and that's what has to be done. I think we can, and I think this is a critical piece of our theater engagement strategy with the CCP, which we're now engaged in. How are we going to fight with this group? Is religious freedom. They can't tolerate it. They can't stand it. The American public strongly supports it. Western civilization does. So we need to start talking about that differentiation, and we need to start thinking about it in those sorts of strategic engagement ways. We ought to invite Chinese dissidents that have been persecuted for their faith to the White House to meet with the President, the Vice President, meet with the Secretary of State as a show. They ought to bring the head, invite the person that started Falun Gong, Li Hongzhi, see if he would come to the White House to meet with the President. He's exiled in the United States in New York. And this is a group that's been decimated, slaughtered in the most vile of ways, because they can't tolerate this indigenous faith that is so natural to China. It's a blended kind of faith of Buddhism, Taoism, Confucian thought, but it's very natural to China, and it was a complete threat to the Chinese Communist Party. And all the Falun Gong wants is a return to the old Chinese civilization that existed before the communists took over. That's really all they want. And so bring them in and start authenticating. And then I also think it would be wise for us to start talking with Tibetan individuals and Tibet authorities about the future of Tibet. This is a place that's never been a part of China. We should be bringing those individuals and talking with them as well. I've got a list of other specific items in my testimony.
Thank you. And Mr. Brownback, this will be my final question. How has intimidation against religious groups outside of China impacted these groups, their worship, their advocacy, their personal lives?
Oh, horribly. Yeah, most Uyghurs I talk to and work with have had family members back home that have disappeared, been killed. They've Falun Gong members that will cite to those. I've had people in this country who have been tracked, shot at, that have testified to me, that have been open people that have testified against what's going on in the CCP, tracked, marked, tires slashed in this country. This transnational oppression, or another person referred to as transnational terrorism. And I think we've really got to be much more aggressive at prosecuting these cases when they happen in this country.